Hello Wildlanders, SK here. Today we're going to take a look at some tips and tricks for Magic users. These tips will be primarily for newer Wildlanders as well as players with moderate experience. One of the difficulties with early game as a mage is that most spells are limited in their effectiveness and drain most of your magicka fairly quickly. You are able to make a more potent scroll for different spells easily so long as you know the spell you're trying to create and have an equal paper rolls and a quill. Stronger spells will likely need more of these supplies to create a scroll for, so just a heads up there. I recommend preparing this ahead of time for a spell you will want to cast at the beginning of combat, such as Mage Armor or Blur. This allows you to get the protection usually at a more potent strength than you can cast yourself, while also allowing you to have full magicka while in the fight. Alternatively, if you know you are fighting a specific enemy, for example a troll, and want to deal fire damage, you can have a scroll with the fire spell prepared to get a good blast on him ahead of time, allowing you to use the rest of your magicka to finish the job. The next tip is a lesson hard learned from someone that refused to use fire magic in my first playthrough. Especially during the early game, fire magic is the best type of destruction magic. There are a couple reasons for this. First and foremost, certain enemies are unkillable as a low-level mage character unless you use fire magic. Most notably, Spriggans and Trolls have massive health regeneration that is just unfazed by low-level lightning and frost magic. Fire magic will, however, negate their regeneration, but only while the fire magic is being used. You cannot pepper fire attacks at them. The stream of fire damage needs to be a consistent stream, or these enemies are likely to heal right through your spell. Fire magic also does the most raw damage in general of 3 options. This is not to say that frost and lightning magic aren't worth using, because they are just less versatile during the early parts of the game. Adding on to this tip, if you put a perk into dual casting, you may notice the price of dual casting a spell is double that of casting it individually. This is working as intended. The difference when you have the dual casting perk is not the cost to dual cast, but rather the damage done by the dual casting. This perk makes your destruction magic more potent, turning you into much more of a blaster. For instance, if you were to cast a firebolt spell that costs 51 to cast and does 25 fire damage, dual casting would increase the cost to 102, or double, and the damage would be 62.5. This is an additional 25% fire damage total for each time you dual cast the spell as compared to not having the perk. One of the biggest changes to magic users in Wildlander is your equipped armor and clothing have an impact on the cost for your spells. How this works is as your armor and clothing weight increases, so does the cost to cast spells. If you're trying to cast a conjuration spell and you're not wearing any clothing, it will be much cheaper than if you're wearing mage clothes. With this being said, light armor has a higher multiplier than clothing, so the effect of light armor weight on a spell cost is greater. Heavy armor has the highest cost for spells, not only due to the weight being more than other clothing and armor, but also because it has the highest multiplier to magic cost. To summarize this, the general rule of thumb is that clothing has the lowest spell cost, light armor has a moderate cost, and heavy armor has a very high cost for casting spells. There is some good news for players who are wanting to play a more battle mage style character and are using light or heavy armor. There are branches on the perk trees for heavy armor and evasion that reduce the cost to casting spells. For instance, at heavy armor level 25, you can put a perk in the combat casting slot, and this will reduce the penalties to both your novice and apprentice spell costs. This scales as you level up the heavy armor tree, eventually reducing the overall cost to every spell you cast by 15% to help mitigate the increased cost of casting spells. If you choose to wear light armor, the evasion tree mitigates all penalties when wearing light armor once you reach level 50 in evasion, and put a perk into the agile spellcasting skill, which is such a major boon for those of us wanting to play a light armor character. This tip is an oldie but a goodie. The Blur spell is probably the most common spell in any mage's repertoire, regardless of whether or not you're using the illusion tree otherwise. As a mage character, a lot of things are a scary sight. A great hammer about to come down on you, an enemy with a lightning bolt staff draining not only your health, but also your magicka, now leaving you without any way to fight back, but arguably the scariest sight is a bowman hiding atop a small tower out of range firing arrows at you. This is where the blur spell enters the conversation. Not only does it increase your armor rating, reducing incoming physical damage in general, but it also negates a random amount of ranged damage from that of a bow or a crossbow. I would say if you are a mage and not wearing any type of armor, that this is all but a requirement to survive, as even if you're a level 20 mage, unless you have some major health buffs going on, a single flying arrow will put your character down. We will talk about empowering spells more in depth in the next mage tips video, but empowering this spell increases the resistance to ranged physical attacks significantly. In other words, empowering the blur spell makes it much more effective at keeping you alive against archers. The final tip will explain how to get a very powerful item super early in the game. If you do not want the spoiler about this item in the quest, I recommend exiting the video now. The item we are looking for is called the Necromancer's Amulet. There are 2 requirements for this item. The first being that your base magicka is 150 points. This number will not be calculated into any enchantments, potions, or other means of gaining magicka outside of what your magicka would be without these buffs. If you wear it with less than 150 base magicka, you'll just die very fast. The reason this amulet is so powerful is because not only does it give you a massive 30% cost decrease for all conjuration spells while wearing it, but it increases your base magicka by 200 points. The amulet does decrease your magicka and stamina regeneration by 75%, however, you can very easily counter the stamina debuff by eating something that regenerates your stamina by 1 every second. In terms of the magicka reduction, with the additional magicka you are more able to finish any enemies by the time you need more magicka. Once you have the minimum magicka required, the next step is to head to Windhelm. You're going to need to activate the quest called Blood on the Ice. Because of the buggy nature when it comes to this quest, my recommendation is to leave Windhelm and return 3 times in a row at night. For this, I would enter the town after 7 PM and look at the crime scene, leave, walk to the farm, and repeat 3 times, and then for me the quest began. You'll see a dead body and guards here, which tells you the quest has been triggered. You'll want to talk to the guard and from there question the witnesses. They don't know anything significant, so you report back to the guard. He's disinterested. If you want to deal with it, you deal with it, is pretty much what he says. From here, you need to go talk to Yorlif, and then you can examine the crime scene. The blood leads you to one of the purchasable homes. You can speak with Tova, who lives right next to this building. After demanding to speak with her, she'll give you the key and you can just enter the building. Once you're inside, you need to grab the amulet in a hidden room behind a shelf. Additionally, inside of a small shelf, you will want to grab the butcher flyers. After this, you'll want to speak with Viola, and she'll give you a bit more information on the quest. Then you want to go speak to Calixto. Now admittedly, I didn't realize I did the quest wrong and accused Woundfirth, never realizing he was actually innocent. The correct way to do this is now speak with Woundfirth, then wait in the smithing area for Calixto to come and stab Aravanya. Then you just need to kill Calixto, you've caught the killer, you'll return the quest to Yorlif, and you've done the quest. Now you have this powerful amulet and you can wear it at your leisure. I do hope you found this video useful. If you did, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Stay safe, Wildlanders.